Hey, everybody. I know that I'm live and it's a new book and you don't necessarily see what's going on at the moment. Whoops. And so this is a new book. This is a new book. Hang on, let me do this. This. Well, it's not a new book or I wouldn't be able to read it. This is Christy by Catherine Marshall. And this is about a community in a place called Cutter Gap, Tennessee. And as far as I know, this is on the, well, let's read the prologue, okay? Need different glasses. Hey, Barefoot Chickens. We're starting a new book. Oh, good. Christy, prologue. And it's long, so I don't think it's going to be chapter 1. We'll see. Oh, I love this book. Okay, prologue. On that November afternoon, when I first saw Cutter Gap, the crumbling chimney of Alice Henderson's cabin, the crumbling chimney of Alice Henderson's cabin stood stark against the sky, blackened by the flames that had consumed the house. The encroaching field grass and chickweed and pennyroyal had all but obliterated even the outline of the foundations. But the old mission house was still there, high on its rise of ground, with the mountain towering behind it. Once painted a proud white, the building was gray and sagging, the porch gone. The screening of the kitchen porch rusted and flapping. There were no other buildings left. The church schoolhouse had long since been moved to another location. David Grantland's bunkhouse had been demolished. Nonetheless, I was standing on the spot which I had always longed to see, the site of the adventures recounted so vividly by my parents during all my growing up years. In a sense, I had lived through those experiences too. Mother stood beside me looking at the house, silent, lost in the thoughts that were pulling her back 46 years to the last time she'd seen the cove. The years had brought changes. 2 world wars had reached deep into the mountains to snatch away Cutter Gap men. Those who had returned brought back some of the world outside, brought on clothes, canned food, pop, soda pop, autos, battery radios over which blared hillbilly music and soap operas, and latterly television and consolidated schools. Appalachia's economic problem had never been solved. So in a variety of ways, the federal government had stepped in. On July 11th, 1936, President Franklin Roosevelt, by presidential proclamation, had incorporated the towering scenery of Cutter Gap into the Cherokee National Forest. Then on September 2nd, 1940, the president had personally dedicated 460,000 acres of the North Carolina, Tennessee Appalachians into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Most of the families who lived either in the forest or the park had eagerly or reluctantly sold their small land holdings to the United States government. By the time I saw the cove, cabin after cabin stood vacant. Forest rangers and tourists roamed the gap. The black bear and the white-tailed deer, the raccoon and the bobcat, the red fox and the wild boar were returning to the forests. But Mother was surprised to find that certain things had not changed. Though some of the main routes through the mountains were now well-engineered highways, the way into Cutter Gap was noted on the map as a poor motor road, and then a trail, actually almost inaccessible. It was Huguet Lee and his wife Mary who met us in Lyleton in their old sedan, led us toward the cove. They and their 3 boys lived in what had been the old mission house, and they invited us to be the guests for the night. The 12 miles from Lyleton to El Pano were a good enough turnpike, but soon after we left El Pano behind, Mother was exclaiming, "Why, imagine this road not being paved. It's as bad as ever." And she was right. The low-slung modern car in which we were following the Lees was sinking almost to the floorboards in the ruts. We came to an especially deep, wide rut. "Catherine, the mud hole! It's the old mud hole. It's still here." It just isn't possible," Mother sounded as if she mistrusted her own eyes. "Well, then, maybe there aren't as many changes as I had thought." With each mile, the scenery was more rugged, the road more impossible. "Hey, Angel." We drove for an hour at a crawling pace, sometimes with the car's right wheels on the rim of the narrow track. I was relieved when Mr. Lee led us into the yard of a cabin and motioned for us to stop. He came striding back to us. "Think you'd best leave your car here overnight," he grinned. His grin was sheepish. "Yours would never make it on from here." "You'll see what I mean." He held out his hand for my keys. "Let me transfer your bags to my jitney." Then in the Lee's car, we jerked and slithered along the washboard of a trail, sometimes bumping so outrageously that our heads struck the car roof. There were washouts and gullies, and twice we had to ford a tumbling mountain stream. "Hey, Angela." Mary and Mother kept up lively conversation, for Mother was full of questions. What finally happened to the McCones? When did Miss Alice's cabin burn? Did they ever know the cause of the fire? How many of my pupils from Cutter Gap did Hazen Smith finally send out of the cove to school? What year was it that the mission closed? Where did they move the church schoolhouse? In between Mother's questions, Mary volunteered. "I teach 4th grade in the new consolidated school. It's so hard getting in and out of the cove that I have to get up at 4 each morning to make it." Finally, the car bumped over frozen ruts into the edge of the mission yard and stopped. John and Bob and Tow, all tow heads, came to greet us. Rather grave children, I thought. And Mother stood and looked, trying to see everything at once. And then she was inside the house, exploring from room to room, I close beside her, as interested in her recreations as in the house itself. Yes, the dining room was still much the same. Tangled tongue and groove walls, only now there was a mail order stove providing the only heat in the house, with a pipe through the ceiling. There was still no running water. The old telephone was in its place on the wall in the back of the hall. "Remember my telling you out about our first conversation over it?" Mother asked. "Hilarious. That little red burl." Yes, I remembered. This is just the prologue, folks. She stopped in the parlor doorway, her face aglow. The Lion and Healy. Imagine! The huge concert piano still stood there, only now a winter supply of pumpkins and squash and gourds was piled on top, and the ivory was missing from most of the keys. In the front bedroom upstairs, to which Mr. Lee carried our overnight cases, there were fluffy, clean curtains at the windows. How did they know, Mother puzzled, that this was once my room? Since there was some daylight left, she was eager for more reconnoitering. "Catherine, would you walk down the road with me? I want to find out a lot of things." As we walked along, I saw the path of the branch in front of the mission house was still the same, just as my parents had described it. I sensed the excitement rising in my mother as the years fell away. She was the 19-year-old Christy again, exploring the same road wearing the shoes she had bought at the Bon Marché in Asheville. Ice-picked toes, David Grantland had teasingly called them. Yes, the old teal tobacco barn to the left of the road was there. Just around the bend would be their cabin. Presently, we were standing at the edge of the yard she knew so well. No one was around. It was like walking into an empty stage setting or into one's own dream. The clumps of old English boxwood in the yard were surrounded by rusty tin cans, rotting tires, pieces of twisted metal, old newspapers. As we walked by the creaking wooden stairs at one end of the porch, I almost caught my heel in a rotting board. The front door was standing ajar, sagging half off its hinges. We stood in the doorway, giving our eyes time to adjust to the darkness inside. Deserted. Everything gone. Everyone gone. Where had they gone? It was as if the cabin had been evacuated hurriedly because the floor was awash with veritable snowstorm of slips of paper. I stooped and picked up one of the slips and looked at it and handed it to Mother. It was a receipt of a week's pay from a cotton mill in South Carolina. Curious now, I retrieved other slips in small envelopes. They were all from the same mill, weekly pay envelopes. 250, 14, 9097. Smith O'Teal, Otter O'Teal, Mountie O'Teal. Mountie? I remember the little girl who had giggled, "See my buttons? See my pretty buttons?" The new teacher, Christy, my mother, had given her love and had given her life. Mother shook her head in disbelief at the dates on the envelopes. They're not many years back. The children must have left the mountains to work in a mill, and they sent most of their pay home. I watched her turning the slips of paper over and over in her hands as if trying to make them speak to her. How could I ever forget, she recalled, that first evening when I saw the half-witted epileptic boy here, right here in that pen in the corner. I lost my supper that first night after I'd seen this cabin. It was Miss Alice whose cool hands and warm heart comforted me. Miss Alice. My mother's blue eyes held a faraway look. Strange that after all these years, the memory of her is still warm and alive. I suppose because a personality like hers can never die. I thought of Alice Henderson as she had been described to me, a tall, blonde patrician with a certain sparkle. Her basic beliefs had been as settled and as sure as 19-year-old Christy's had been unsure. Yet always there had been Miss Alice's eagerly grasping mind, ready for new adventures of heart or spirit. The Quaker lady had been at the center of all drama that had been acted out on this gigantic stage with these mountains, blue and mauve and purple brooding and unchanging as the backdrop. It was at that moment, standing there in the O'Teal cabin, thinking of Alice Henderson, that I thought of my first clear glimpse of the book I had always wanted to write about the mountains, my mountains, for these were the hills of home. I had been born among the mountains like these all of my life. Wind-swept heights had fascinated me and challenged me and steadied me. As if reading my thoughts, my mother said shyly, "The story aches to be told, Catherine. The secrets of human spirit that Alice and Henderson knew, the wisdom that she shared is needed by so many today. And the mountain people, my friends, Fairlight and Opal, Jeb Spencer and Polly Teague, Ruby May and Little Burl, my school children. I want people to know them as they really were. But Catherine, I'm not the one to put it on paper. You know, sometimes the dreams of parents must be fulfilled by the children." And suddenly I understood how the story should be written. Through Mother's eyes. as I had seen it all along. Only from the beginning my imagination had taken hold of the true incidents and had begun shaping them so that now, after so many years, I myself scarcely knew where the truth stopped and the fiction began. Therefore, though much of the story really happened, I would set it down in the form of fiction. I knew it would be, though many a winter's evening before an open fire, though leisurely meals at the round table in the big kitchen at Evergreen Farm, Mother would reminisce while I would take notes. I would question her and probe her for details. Now, Mother, pretend that Aunt Polly Teague is standing before us now. Tell me what she looked like. David, I need to understand him better. Tell me, why did David act that way? As much as she could tell me, I would write. Oh, not the whole story. One book could never hold it all. I'd tell the story of the first year only. 11 months in a young woman's life. But what months? What a lifetime she had lived in them. How could I even get the events of 11 months onto paper? Already I could see that though I had tried to capture truth could never wholly be contained in words. All of us know it. All the same moment, the mouth is speaking one thing and the heart is saying another. Or events are carrying us in one direction when all the while the real life of the spirit is marching in another. And so past all those true experiences that Mother would relate to me, I would walk softly into the realm of what might have been. The rest would be my imagined story. I could not wait to begin. Turning to Mother, I said, when you first saw this cabin, how long had you been in Cutter Gap? Oh, something like 3 weeks. That big snowstorm you arrived in, was the snow gone by the time you walked down here? No, it wasn't. As a matter of fact, I can never think of my first visit in this cabin without seeing bloodstains on the snow. It was a rabbit killed by a hawk. But Mother, from what you've told me, a dead rabbit is the least of it. You'd been so protected at home. The girl Christy was so young and inexperienced. I've never understood how your parents let you come. She laughed softly. A lot of it they never knew. Teaching in a mission school sounded safe, and Dr. Ferrand was the epitome of propriety, so solid and reliable. Father was certain he could entrust me to Dr. Ferrand. Father, dear Father. That was the prologue to Christy. Okay? We'll be back often. We're going to read this one live. And eventually what I'll do is I'll take the live readings and I'll cut them down into pre-recorded readings that can be watched later on. This is Mrs. Volpe from Reading with Beverly Volpe, and our next live book is Christy. No, this is not a first edition. Let me see. The last copyright was in 1967, which means it'll be in the public domain. No. We'll be back. Oh, take care, everybody. I got to go chop up zucchini. Mwah. Have a great day.